everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Google Developer Group Surrey. I'm Preeti. I'm the organizer for this group and hosting this machine learning paper writing club, session number 2 today with Anuj Kumar, St. Donway. Anuj is a lead at ADP. He's an IEEE senior member and a speaker, mentor, and author. And we are glad to have him here with us to guide us in tips and tricks on writing papers. Now you see the image on the screen. That's my team, and it keeps changing and growing. For this club, I'm the one who is hosting it primarily, and there are other clubs, other volunteers are involved in those. And usually you'll see us in-person conferences together, but we welcome everybody's ideas. So feel free to join us and come up with your idea for any kind of club or session and workshops, project showcases. We love to host them. And now over to you, Anuj.
So, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining again. So, let's get started and I'll share my screen. So, let me present. So, before we go to next steps, right? So, what we have covered and Preeti will share the video of this recording that we did in last week. It's why you should even attempt to write a research paper. What are the benefits as a student, as a career industry person, or as an academic? What are the benefits of uh, of writing a research paper? And then we introduced actually the structure of the research paper, and then a strong introduction. How should an introduction look like? Hook, the background, the problem statement. So we covered that. And today we are going to look at the remaining sections of the research paper, literature review, methodology, result discussions, and conclusions, and so forth. So these are, for the quick recap again, this is the core should explain us the pillars of research paper, pillars of a good research paper. This template need not to be followed always, but it's a good starting point to follow this template. A good research paper would have introduction of, as we explained last time, then literature review, then scientific methodology, and then result and discussion on your execution of the research. And there are other cursory subsections that complete the research paper, like abstract, conclusion, and reference. And a research paper, a well structured research paper that we can see one today, has all of these sections. So moving on to our second important portion in a research paper, literature review. Any research, as I explained last time, has to be grounded by the uh, ex- existing studies. If you have an idea, somebody might have had the idea, or somebody might have had the idea around the topic, and you need to research those research papers and cite those research papers into your literature review, build the academic context around the scientific context around your research paper, and from where you can find this kind of research paper. As we saw last time, Google Scholar is one thing, one place. IEEE Explorer is another open source library. ARXIV. So you have to search on a in an area uh, on your research, and then study the other researches that were carried out, and then synthesize them in a literature review section, so that you are acknowledging the existing work that was carried out. A and B, you are actually making the your most important critical aspect, which is identifying the gap in your gap in existing research uh, more prominent. It is like your introduction, but now you're backing your introduction section with the scientific papers to say that, yeah, really, we found this gap. Either the research was incomplete or research did not explain couple of things, and we want to expand on it. You can use some reference manager like Zoret or Mendeley to streamline citations because all of the publications they have their own citation styles, and some of these tools can help you find the citations as well. As I was saying last time, if you fail to cite that, if you think that you don't need a citation, that means you fail to actually look up the source. But most likely or not, the topics that you're building your research paper around have been discussed already in academia. So this is about literature review section. Now comes the methodology section. So methodology is where you actually build your research. Uh, uh, you show the how you're going to carry out your research. What are the components of your research design? Uh, like you're going to carry out experiments and give observation and different methods. For example, in AI ML world, let's say you want to conduct a research on, let's say, astronomical data that NASA provides for identifying water sources on Mars. You give the experimental your components of your research, like you're getting your data from NASA's database, then the data is free to use, or you may be paid certain money to get the access to the data. Then you sort of lay down your tools and frameworks. For example, you're going to use, let's say, NumPy or any other Python library to carry out your research and and give the entire structure of your experiment, and ensure that this structure is not a hypothetical structure, but if someone else was reading your research paper and if they wanted to follow your steps, they would be able to implement that research on their own, uh, um, as well. So that gives the reproducibility. So you might want to link your open source code and stuff like that. And what a sound methodology looks like, right? So you provide the definitive experimental aspect of your entire project. This is where, let's say, you built a project, or you maybe, let's say, you really did a really great project in a hackathon, can become your methodology section, and it shows the work that you did, the rigor that you put in, and practical feasibility of the research itself. So methodology is a very straightforward component of a research paper. Let's say if you are doing a review or a case study type research paper, then how you're conducting that review, what parameters you're, for example, you want to compare different uh, Gen AI LLMs, what parameters, based on what parameters, the human-like text, for example, or ability to solve coding problems, all of those frameworks and parameters you list down, and then you cite the sources which are mentioning these values for um, Gen AI LLMs. So depending upon your research paper, your methodology section will vary, but you provide exact steps and exact executable, let's say, a flow or pipeline to carry out your research methodology, and you demonstrate the by doing this you demonstrate your technical skills, essentially, not just academic skills. So methodology section is very important regardless of what kind of research paper you're writing. So moving on, once you conduct your experiment in the methodology section, you derive some results. Maybe your in a AIML paper, you might be identifying the F1 score or your root mean square or root square values, and you tabulate those results in a table or a clear data visualization. Use the charts, graphs, and ensure that all of the key metrics for your experiment are properly listed and tabulated. Accuracy, precision, recall, etc., as I was saying, right? And then you, based on the output that you got, you expand the discussion and explain that your output that you received was in line with your hypothesis or was not in line with the hypothesis that you began with in the introduction section and in the experiment section. For example, it, as I have mentioned, it is not important to have your hypothesis proven in the result and discussion section, but you are just merely stating the facts here. You are not making up anything. If your result experiments did not turn out to be what your hypothesis were, you still say it. And that is a perfectly fine academic research paper, a scientific research paper. Uh, and how can you relate to it, right? So there have been multiple claims of, for example, um, let's say, for example, water on some XYZ planet. People did the research, but they did not find the water. It still does not undermine their research. Their hypothesis was that they were going to find water or they were going to find XYZ element, but they could not. And that is okay. I recently saw somebody publish a research paper where they were talking the effect of uh, well, effect of actually climate climate change on Lyme disease in North America. Uh, Essentially, what they were hypothesizing is as the temperature is slowly increasing, the Lyme disease is increasing with it as well. But once they took all the data from Kaggle and ran everything, end result they found were the while there were increase in Lyme disease as well as the temperatures in the North Americas, there was no direct one-to-one relation, and hence, based on the research, they could not prove that correlation. And that is okay. You did the proper research and you carried out your experiments and results were not aligning. It still needs to be presented. And then these are the auxiliary sections where you provide the overall conclusion of your paper, where you restate some details and actually restate your main problem statement and then research results, um, and most importantly you acknowledge any limitations in your research, right? For example, you took the data from Kaggle while building AIML research, and in future you might want to redo this research with real data from, let's say you get some funding from a Google, right? And you might be able to source real data. You want to sort of redo this research on real data and make sure your research works. Or let's say there is a new library, but it's going to need a lot of computation power to run. And because of your hardware limitations, let's say you have certain require specification computer with you, you cannot do that work. You list down all the limitations in the limitation sections. Sometimes I see people do conclusion and future work as a separate sections, and that's not a bad idea if your future work can really incorporate novel ideas. And based on this, um, you can sort of wrap up your research paper more strongly, and then make sure you provide the references and citation. And each publisher, right, IEEE or APA or Springer Nature, they have their own mechanism by which citations should be done, and you have to maintain throughout those consistent styles for citations, and each publisher will give you examples, so you don't need to guess what is uh, what is the format for specific citation. And then it really, you're giving credit to the foundational knowledge and the other researchers that have worked before you, and giving, and sort of overall giving the academic and scientific feel to your paper. So that overall the entire conclusion section gives the strong closing loop to the readers of the research paper. So other supporting elements are abstract, which is like it goes right on top of your research paper, as a beginning, where you give the abstract of your entire paper, what you are trying to do and what your outcomes are, and these are abstract are the first paragraph somebody will read before they go and dive deep into your research paper. So it has to capture the essence of your paper in simpler terms and entice the users to read the entire entire paper. And that's why going too technical and using too much jargon is not recommended. And instead, the idea should be to keep the abstract accessible, simple enough, and easy to follow. Then you work with the community to peer review and revise your research paper. It takes a lot of time once you've written the first draft to actually come up with all the revisions, maybe in your language, maybe in your methodology, maybe the way paper is structured. These things need to be improved after the first draft, and you should work with good reviewers and who are sort of not shy to critique the things to make the paper better. And then, as we discussed in last section, you can choose where to publish, either make it open access or self-publish in ARXIV or submit it in a conference or or a journal. Generally, conferences are rated really high in scientific computer science domains because of uh, the way things are set up. So these are like the some of the supporting elements, and that's about it I want to cover for today's presentation. Uh, and we can sort of take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. That was great. That was great. If anyone has any questions, then we can ask. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next section of the session.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, perfect. I guess right now we don't have any questions. Um, I do remember, Anuj, you have the time limitation today. So would you stick for the next
Yeah,
half
I'll
of
be
the
here for
session?
next half an hour. Yeah, I'll be here for next half an hour, 45 minutes. Yeah,
Perfect.
I'll be stepping out for a few minutes, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I hope you can see my screen.
Yep.
Awesome. So the next half of this session is about okay, so Anuj discussed about the overall approach of how do you what are the four pillars of writing a research paper, and I will just go into small tips and tricks of introductions and abstracts, how to write them. So let's just get started. Okay, so let's just start with the why. Why are these introductions and abstracts so crucial? Um, I would think of them as I would like you to think of them as first impressions your research makes to the world. And if you see, the first thing you look for when deciding whether to read a research paper or not, there can be a couple of things. The title, usually people read abstract and then, introduction. But if you don't like the introduction part of it and you have invested your time till then, you wouldn't move forward if the introduction does not make sense to you. So similarly, it has to stand out. It has to create that first impression of your research on the world so that people continue to read your paper, other sections of the paper. Introductions here, they set the stage. They draw readers in, provide context, and they state your thesis clearly, right? They also outline what you'll cover and why it matters. Okay, next up is abstract. Abstracts are your research, consider them as elevator pitch. You have to provide a concise summary. You have to allow readers to access the relevancy and of your research and grasp your key findings and conclusions. That's where abstract comes into the picture. Okay, so I did list out a couple of points that makes it a little easy to understand. But let's see. We are four members here. Have you ever read an abstract and immediately knew that you had to read the full paper? Did that happen to anybody?
Yeah.
That usually the good abstract makes it super easy for us to make it relevant to our work as well, right? It could be us our starting with a new topic. We just want to learn about it. It could be a continuous say work that we want to do on our own research and we want to leverage somebody else's work as well, right? We want to take the inspiration or knowledge from that, and a good abstract can save time for you as a reader and a researcher, because that would stand relevant. And if you feel that okay, the methodology they would discuss further can be of real use to me, then yes, I'll go ahead and read it, right? So that's how it is. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of structure and components, I want to share a few strategies that can definitely improve, that can help us improve writing. Let's say, what are these? Okay, I'll stick to this, then I'll move to next. Okay, so the first tip might sound a little, how should I say? Okay, once you have written the rest, so think of it as, okay, I'm looping in, but here's the thing, how I prefer to write my papers. I write introductions at the end of my work. So that kind of sound counterintuitive, but write your introductions in the last. Think about it once. Um, think about it that you have written the rest of your paper, and now you have much clear picture of the research that you have done, its key findings, and the overall message. But that's my way, and I found it really interesting. As I said, it gives you the whole picture, because research is a process in itself, right? And you might start with some scope, some goal, and you might or might not find the exact answers that you first thought you would find. So it kind of gives you the entire picture, and then you come and you write your introduction. You can always create a small draft and revise the introduction later, but that's how I would suggest you to start. It kind of allows us to craft more compelling and focused introductions that truly captures the essence of our work. Next up, visuals have their own effect on us, right? They are very powerful tools. Um, I suggest when you're thinking of some kind of, let's say, methodology in AI/ML research, we often talk about architectures. We coin many terminology. We compare different tools. So if that's happening, you're talking about them, then try creating tables and figures before you start writing, because that can significantly solidify your understanding as well as readers' understanding of the data and the key messages you want to convey. And it can also help both you and the reader see the patterns, the trends that might not be apparent from just looking at this raw data that you have. Okay, here. Next up, we have, which is kind of obvious, but it's crucial. Make sure you deeply understand your results before you start writing. As I said, sometimes it can be, when you're a beginner, when you're just starting out, um, even your results for, you thought you created your results that this is what I want to see, but they might not always turn out. But it's always a good idea to kind of have this rough direction in mind, right? A draft in mind that, okay, this is what the scope I want to have, this is the result I want to showcase, and let's see how it works out, right? So this kind of prevents you from getting stuck and not stuck in a loop. Like what happens with some people that they start read they don't, sometimes they don't put a draft on of results, and they will start with just say problem statement or a title topic, sorry, and they'll start learning one topic, then another, and in no time they'll get caught in a loop of just learning, and there is so much to learn, and so much to know, new information, new technology, and suddenly their thought process may drift away and it may get even lengthier. So it prevents you from getting stuck, and it ensures that your writing is clear, it's concise, it's focused on most important findings. I hope that makes sense so far. Let's move on to the introductions. I was reading this. They have Harvard Graduate School of Education have a good, beautiful article on writing good introductions, and this is an hourglass model they have. I would like to talk about this one. So the basic thing they're trying to tell is that you start broad. You start grabbing the reader's attention, you provide context, and then you narrow down to your specific thesis statement. If you, as you can see, the structure here, and then the body of your paper further develops this thesis, and finally the conclusion broadens out again to discuss the implications of your findings. And within this hourglass structure, there are key components, as you see here: introduction, body, conclusion, which you can find on the page, or I would also go in brief, about them. Okay, so we'll go through each of these components step by step. First up, we have the hook and the attention grabber, and this is kind of your opening line, your chance to grab the reader's attention and make them want to keep reading. Now, there are different types of hooks you can use, and in this session, I would not go about those hooks, like the type of hooks, but some are startling statistics, like you come up with, like I was talking earlier about the carbon use, sorry, the 510 CO2 that we are using in training the models, right? So you can simply start by some kind of statistics like that, and that could be a hook for you. You can start with some kind of questions like, did you know? Or how many of us do this, or some kind of question, or you can start with an anecdote. But there are different types of hooks and attention grabbers, and there you Howard this writing website. I can share that later. And then there is Purdue Owl, I guess. They also publish more about hook and attention grabber. That would be a great source for everybody to look at. Now, the key is to choose a hook that is relevant to your research and and it will resonate with your audience then. Um, because let's say I'm talking a couple of minutes ago, Anuj was talking about the research, that they were putting into Lime. Now that audience is different, and whoever wants to read it would most likely and then would try to either read about environmental researches, or some kind of models being used here. Okay, what kind of data is it being used here? So you can start with a couple of those kind of hooks which resonate more to your audience then, and of course speaks like in the beginning speaks more relevance about your research. Now, after the hook, we need move on to the next one, and that is to provide some background information on your topic. We will look at one example later in this session. So let me quickly tell you how does the background information problem works. This will help set the stage for your research. It will ensure that readers have the necessary context to understand your work. So now, uh, there was this particular article I was reading about LLM, and it kept talking about how transformers changed things, how they made it more speedier. But if I'm a beginner, I don't know what's transformer, right? I only, as a beginner, I might just know the Transformers I watched in the movies, right? So now somebody has to give me a context for me to understand the Transformer first, and then probably LLMs. And now there might be a reason that I'm reading LLM, probably because of the buzzword, or somebody who just wants to get the overview of it. And the background of transformer and an overview as a background of the transformer might have helped me there, right? So that's how the background information would help, but be careful because it can sometimes overload the reader. Too much information at this stage may yes overload somebody, and they might also feel that your focus is shifting it. So just keep it concise and focused. When you're writing a background information problem, uh, just make sure that it doesn't take away the focus of the entire research paper. You're just giving good enough information, not too much information, right? Now, you need to clearly identify the problem or the gap in the knowledge that your research addresses. This is essential for establishing the relevance and importance of your work. Now, in the last session, we did talk about how do you find gap in the knowledge, or problem statements. Well, that's again like any other skill. Research work is also a skill. You develop it slowly. When you're reading different things, when you are working on some problems, or in general, you have a usage for something, and you find that it's nowhere to be found. The solution for it is nowhere to be found. That's where you find a gap, and that's where you point it out, and probably that's where you get your statement. And sometimes it can be just out of your curiosity, right? So that's how it will work. um Let me see, are we still here? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So perfect. So we are covered till statement, and now for the heart of your introduction, this thesis statement we're talking about. And this is where you again, clearly and concisely, you state the main argument or purpose of your research. It should guide the entire paper and provide a roadmap for what the reader can expect, right? If the papers are longer or complex papers, that's what in longer complex papers, what I have seen is that most of the authors, they do include a roadmap. Um, Mostly, I'll see them in white papers. But if your paper is, let's say, 4 to 6, pages long, a roadmap is not required. But it's more if it is more complex and longer, you do try to include the roadmaps there. It's kind of a brief overview of the structure of your paper and outlining the main sections, topics that you'll cover. So it becomes a small. The big and complex papers actually become a small book on certain topic to read in itself. So it's a great idea to include a roadmap because the readers can understand how your research is organized and what to expect as they read. Okay, now the show time. Okay, this is very popular paper in AI/ML domain. Attention is all you need, and I have taken this screenshot of the introduction from that paper. What I have tried here is to identify the sections that we just talked about. How are we leveraging background info, the statement, etc., or the hook points, right? So if you see, let me see. So here, the recurrent neural networks, long short-term memory, and the gated RNNs in particular have been firmly established as state-of-the-art approaches in sequence modeling and transaction problems such as language modeling and machine translation. Now, this one entire sentence, it sets a context of RNN being the leading method for tasks like language translations, right? Now, now literally, this becomes the background info at the same time your attention grabber for the new reader. Okay, next one. If you go here on this particular sentence, this is again, this is all introduction. From here, this inherently sequential nature precludes parallelization within training examples, which becomes critical at longer sequence lengths as memory constraints limit batching across examples. Now, this is a problem statement and gap so far. Okay, so this is how the authors try to add it to their introduction so that reader knows what we are trying to focus on, like what kind of problem we are trying to solve here, right? And then comes the thesis statement. In this work, we propose the transformer, and till the output, if you read, this is their thesis statement. They're trying to tell what they are trying to solve. And this one, the last, sorry, I forgot to annotate. I missed it. This is a conclusion in the introduction. The transformer allows for significantly more parallelization and can reach a new state of the art. And blah blah blah. So this is the conclusion. So this is exactly what we are talking about. We put the context at the background information, we put the problem statement, we see the thesis statement, and we try our conclusion, right? Okay. Now in this particular introduction, you will find that the authors start with background information. Then they point out the limitations of the models, and then they talk about how the inability to process information in parallel slows models down, and then they highlight while attention mechanism have been used to improve these models, they are still mostly used in conjunction with the slower recurrent networks. And so, and that's how they come and they talk about a new model that is transformer And then they talk about the process that got faster because of their transformers, which is this conclusion. Okay. Now the abstracts. Um, are we here, or do we need like 2 minutes, 5 minutes breather?
I think we're here. I'm listening.
Okay, perfect. I can
No, we're
just
good.
go on. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Abstracts now. The okay. Now, as I was saying, consider it as an elevator pitch or just the standalone summary for your research. Now, it needs to be clear, concise, as we repeated, and engaging. While introductions are kind of setting the stage, abstracts, on the other hand, provide a concise overview of the entire paper. And sometimes they will be the first to be looked at in your paper, and sometimes they will be the only part of your paper being looked at that people will read. And based on this reading, they might recommend it to somebody else as well, that okay, I think this paper um, covers a topic or methodology or innovation part that you have been looking for. So that's how it works. So it's it's very, very crucial to make abstracts as good as we can, as strong as we can. And we can just follow a simple structure for this. Okay. Okay. Let me refer to my notes real quick. Okay. So we're talking about IMRAD structure, that is IMRAD structure. Just we're talking about introduction, methods, results, and conclusion. If that acronym works, perfect. If not, we can just remember the introduction, methods, results, and conclusion. Okay, let's just break it down again. As we so this introduction is not really the introduction as we saw in earlier. This is again actually somewhat same, but very concise. It's again the background section of your abstract, or in a very brief set, where it sets the context again for your research and states the main research question or problem. But it's going to be brief because we do not because introduction is already a section in itself, and now we want to keep it more focused on most relevant information. You summarize the key methods. Um, After that, you summarize the key methods you use in your research, and this will include your study design, the data collection procedure, if you collected, if you use any relevant tools or technologies you use, and if you build your if your work is inspired by somebody else's work, you would want to mention it in this methods. Now, you'll provide enough details for readers to understand how you conducted your research in a couple of sentences, but you'll avoid, bogging down in technicalities, because that would be other section. That would be methodology section for you um, if somebody is going to read it. Okay, now this is where you present your most important findings, include both descriptive and inferential statistics. So only if applicable, if you have those. Otherwise, you can simply write, whatever trends or patterns you want to highlight. Next we'll come on to the focus, and we'll directly address your research question or problem in the result. And like Anuj mentioned, it can always result in the desired output or not desired output, but that is always a result. That's always going to be a result of your research, and it needs to be presented in your paper. It needs to be spoken about. I guess that's a good grammatical sentence. I don't know, but yeah, that's how it's going to be. So finally, after the result, you state your main conclusion and the implication, if there is any limitation. What did your research demonstrate, and what are the key takeaways? So I personally have seen, and like it personally to write an action item in conclusion, or if you want to create a separate future direction section, that's up to you. But mostly I've seen in the conclusion, if people don't create a future section separate, then in conclusion they would like to include call to action, uh, because that also kind of gives the reader something to do if they want to. If they are reading this topic, they might want to do something with this topic, as much as it's just about building a knowledge base. So we do that, and we end it with a strong concluding statement that summarizes the significance of your findings. So now, with this, I think I've talked about how we make our introductions and abstracts, and we'll try to see how attention is all you need has done it. So if you see, and I did try to label it, but one thing here, first of all, you see that conclusion is, I haven't added conclusion in the abstract. Okay, let me see. Uh-uh. Yes, because this one, they did not add a conclusion. Instead, they just tried to talk about what they have in terms of their results. So if you see the background, if you talk about the dominant sequence transaction models are based on complex RNNs that include an encoder or a decoder. So this is not neither a problem statement nor a solution. This is a simple background for abstract. And that means that they are trying to explore something around here in the paper when you read inside the paper. Now, the methods, they talked about the methods briefly. They proposed a new simple network architecture, and then you can read further. But they did talk about the methods, and they talk about results around there. Our model achieves this is this, right? So this is how you want now if I was somebody who would want to know on this topic, if I'm somebody who wants to know about this, right? If I want to know about this, or how this like 8 GPUs worked, uh, I would straight away, I know straight away what am I expecting in the paper, right? Okay, perfect. uh any questions so far?
Great
Uh,
content so far.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
really well
So,
pressed. Also,
thank you so much.
I just had
Yeah.
one question. With technical papers, is it less common for people to give conclusion in the abstract? I mean, just a conclusion in the abstract, because that's what I've noticed. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but is that so?
So allow me to answer. So
Yes.
there are some things we call technical articles, and technical articles may not follow the structure, but when you talk about the technical research paper, the one that we are talking here, in that case, uh, conclusion and abstract and introduction are for sure a must. There is no paper without an abstract. And like, for example, when you try to submit your paper in most of the journals, the first thing they might ask you is to submit your abstract so that they can match if the topic of your paper align to the journal itself or not. So yes, for the purpose that we have, abstract and introduction and conclusion are absolutely a must. There is no escaping of.
Okay.
Does
Thank
it
you.
make
Yeah.
sense, Anup?
No. What I actually wanted to know was, she mentioned an abstract would contain an introduction. a
Mhm,
bit about so I'm rad method is what you mentioned for the
mhm,
abstract, right? So yeah, a bit of conclusion in the ending of abstract is what some papers include and some papers don't, is what you had mentioned, if I'm not wrong, right?
mhm,
So is that the case with, because there were like a few papers that I had read, which was like one was flash attention and all of those. They just give you the results, but no conclusion. Even attention is all you need for
mhm.
that. Case was something of similar case as well. So yeah.
Let me understand the question a little better. I'm sorry if I make you say
I
that again,
understand
but
his
but
I
uh,
understand his question a little bit
mhm,
more in detail now. So yeah,
the-
Anup, in that case, yes, you don't need to explicitly state your findings and conclusions in the introduction. You are right in that case.
Okay,
You don't need to. So abstract is just like a introduction to your paper, which is more on the high levels, and you don't need to go into exact findings that you had received in the paper.
I see. Okay, yeah, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
I would like to add on that one. That if you see about the conclusion, like it's not very evident, but at the same time it is. If you see, they say on the WMT, this is this, after this training for 3.5 days on this, a small fraction of training cost of the best models for from literature, right? They're still trying to conclude by emphasizing on how important these findings are, especially because their system is much more efficient. So they're just showcasing the data, like their findings, and that's how they're concluding it. That can make it a conclusion still, but that is very different than the overall conclusion of the paper. So it's just the conclusion of the attention, if that makes sense.
I see. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, no worries. And yes, last is that do provide context, do provide enough background, um, credit. So always cite your sources you're using, because otherwise it becomes that it's just you saying things and you haven't really, like, it's just your opinion, which is okay, but for somebody to believe on your opinion, if it is backed up by a couple more uh, researchers out there, that would be great. And if you could provide background with those citations, that would be great, and that would stand very relevant to it, and people would feel more, people would trust your research more. That is one way of engaging the audience, when you're being transparent, and that's more trustworthy in that case. Clarity on, I would say, at most, just methodology. It has to be very clear. In one of the papers we did receive this, um, the review was about the clarity, how the, because we forgot to mention the data, how did we get the data and what kind of data looked like, and but later we included it. But even that piece of it was so crucial that that took at least one person's um, attention out of our paper, right, out of sight. And of course, there, if you leave questions for people to answer, if you answer a question or what led you to answer that problem, that would be great. Again, that's amazing way to engage the audience. And call to action, as I said, that's a great way for people to see the future of your research, and get engaged in it. People might come back to you and ask to elaborate more on it, on this strategy, and you might help them too. So that's how I think it's going to be. And with that, I will conclude uh, my talk for today. And we can share if we have any ideas. We can ask questions from this. Otherwise, I'll move on to the action items for next week. And thanks for asking question, Anuruddh. That was good.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Also, this was a question that arose when Anuj was presenting. I'm not sure if it's relevant, but that was during my thesis work. There a lot of my friends had this confusion as well. So we had experimental setup and experiments and methodology. So there was some sort of ambiguity between the methodology and experiments actually. So yeah. Uh, like is it a more specific case of methodology? Is that what uh experiments would be in that case? uh mm-hmm.
Exact steps that you have provided in the paper, then I would have the exact same experiment. So you
Okay.
say, let's say I took the data from Kaggle, then I applied this library, and it ran on the Python, it ran the code on, let's say, a MacBook Pro with this much specification. If I take all those three things together myself, I should be able to replicate your experiment. That is methodology. Now, what is the nature of anomaly or deviation that you're talking about?
Sorry.
You want to, so what is the exact type of differences you had with your methodology and experiment?
And the framework that we eventually ended up following was methodology was basically an overview of how we would proceed the plan pretty much for the entire research process, and then experiment were deep down more specific cases of what experiments we conducted and what results we got, individual results that we obtained from those experiments, kind of like that is what we did. But was that like right? I'm not
So
not in.
if I'm trying to understand your
Okay.
problem,
Mm-hmm.
you had, let's say, one framework that you wanted to use in your methodology, but when you went in and did your experiment,
Mm-hmm.
you had to use something else. Was that the case?
Not entirely. So it was more so like methodology was greater plan, and then experiments actually were like fundamental units that contributed to the entire grand picture of it.
Oh, so
So
you had a big project
yeah.
and your team just did the one portion of that project, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So your paper will talk about the portion of the project that your team worked on.
Okay.
What I have seen is in the large ideas, right? I have seen authors break down their research paper in two or three research papers where they build upon portion by portion. And let's say you and your friends, like the two or three friends, and it's a really big project, and you might need 2 years time to complete the entire project, right? But a certain part of the project which still is and it's um if we had to look at that part of project alone, it still holds towards a scientific experiment or scientific code execution project, in our case AML project. Then it's a paper worthy, and that's okay. You can mention that this project is part of this specific experiment is part of the larger project, and give the users overall context,
I see. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
yeah.
Yep. If I understood right, I mean, I believe the experiment you can still include it. Sorry, that should be included in the methodology. Um, that okay, these are the steps you took to conduct, your experiments, and then that's the procedure part in methodology, I would say.
Okay.
But yeah, but
Right.
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
I
Probably,
hope
probably
you.
because it was a larger thing, which was a dissertation. That's why we had like this additional section that we were supposed to write. Maybe when it's papers that you're writing, it doesn't count. That's what I would guess. So yeah.
The
And also
experiments,
what? Sorry.
the experiments.
As in separate a whole section just to there'll be a part of methodology strategy, as you mentioned, right? Like
Yeah,
procedure or subsection as such.
yeah.
And also what Anuj said, I agree. Like, there are times when you have a larger project, like, and you break them down with multiple papers, right? So I've seen a few of my friends do that.
Right.
So yeah.
I would just talk about like simple experiment that I was doing, and that was testing different models, testing my plan on different models. And I started with the basic CNNs, and then went on and on. But in the paper, I just listed one, which was the final one, and the reviewer questioned in that one, or did you just mention this? So I would consider testing others as experiment as well. I'm not sure how relevant it is to your use case, but I then in the revision version, I mentioned that these were in the procedures, not writing the entire like different section, but in a couple of sentences, I did mention that these were the experiments that I ran, and then then the reason why I chose what I chose. But I'm not really sure how relevant it is to your use case.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I do hope you found the answer.
Yeah, yeah. This was long before, so yeah, it's all over now. So, but yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. Okay, okay, I have a friend just joined. Shreya, hello. Hi, Aditi.
Hey, yeah, I was in another meeting. I wanted to join beforehand, but I kind of found out that I am late. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Just to give everybody a background, Shreya and I, we are part of Women in AI Canada research group. We just started that research group and trying to narrow down to the use cases. But yes, that's where we are. So I guess this is all knowledge building, both the clubs.
Yeah,
Perfect. Okay, Bashra,
So,
this
all right,
is
I'll leave you guys.
okay.
Uh, I'll take your permission to drop today, and best of luck, everyone.
Thank you, Anaj.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I have a couple of things I would like to talk about. Actually, just one or two. So there is $500 Google Cloud credits that we may get, but for that we need to submit our project idea. You don't have to submit the entire research paper. It would just be the idea that this is what you want to work on. And once they like it, they will get back to you, and you might get $500 credited for Google Cloud Platform, just in case you need. So I guess we can take this entire week or two, and we can come up with our ideas, and I will share that link with you guys later in email, and you can submit your ideas there. You don't really have to go through me. Like you can submit there, so it will still be, yeah, there would not be security issues, I hope. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I hope that I can join from the beginning so that I can get some insights. This time, sorry, I'm late. Maybe we'll join next time and discuss on something. When is our next?
Next one, let me check. It should be next week because um because I thought it's on March 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought with the writing clubs, or in general with paper writing, if you leave it unattended, like if you leave the topics or this work unattended for more than a week, you there are more
Yeah.
chances you won't get back to it. You won't touch it because this is a tedious task. This is like that. You need to be focused, and and as humans, we just want to be rested and want to be more relaxed and don't really look at these tedious tasks. But so I kept the frequency like weekly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All
But
right.
I will share the link. But this one is recorded. I'm going to publish it
Yeah,
soon.
please. Yeah, maybe I can go through it. Thank you so much, Riti.
Yeah, no worries. I'll stop recording.